So I walked straight through there on the third time, and I had a 500 ml glass bottle of Coke, and it was empty, and I knew exactly what was going to happen. And as soon as the first one came, I just hit the ground and just slashed him right across the throat.
All that talk to my gang pull up, and we pull up and they all dip.
Yo, it's your boy King Dave here, and this is the Felon Show. Hope all is going well out there. How about you introduce yourself, cousin, where you're from?
Firstly, I just want to say a massive shout out to you. Congratulations on the Felon Show and all the hard work you're doing over there. Land of the White Cloud, brother, New Zealand.
Brother.
Hey, mate, it's an honor. Thank you very much for having me on. I'm on the Gold Coast of Australia. My name is Brent Simpson, known as Simo.
All right, and he's got his little 5'8" there with him as well. Who's that, brother?
Yeah, this is Spike. To be honest with you, I had a grandfather who I absolutely loved and adored. He's the only man in my life that I truly, growing up, I respected. And when this little buddy come into my life, I felt this sort of spiritual connection with him. I thought, that's my grandfather. So this is Spike. Yeah. Hello, Uncle Dave. Hello, Uncle Dave. He's an Alexandrine parrot, and he's going to get a lot bigger, and fucking that beak's going to get a lot harder when he bites. But anyway, at the moment, he's doing all right. Yeah, brother. Here we are.
All right, Big Simo, man. The Clink podcast. Really, the man needs no introduction. He's got his own podcast himself, man. Best podcast in Australia currently. The Clink. So definitely go check that out. Yeah, man, this fella here, man, former street kid, abuse survivor, bikie enforcer. He actually cycled across Australia as well to raise funds for mental illness, man. Much respect for that one, brother. I actually even caught you on your, is it Insight? I think I caught you on Insight when I was actually.
It was.
Yeah, I actually saw that in the Nick, brother. And I actually just realized recently that was you. Yeah, I watched that while I was in the Nick, brother. And I was like, man, this guy's all right. And it's actually, we're talking now. So yeah, so again, this guy's been through quite a bit. And he's kicking goals in life right now. But I guess we'll run into your story, brother. So Sydney, is that where the John Dory begins?
Yeah, brother. So I grew up on basically in the late 70s, early 80s. There was the western suburbs of Sydney, Campbelltown, as it was known. And in that area was a very low demographic, basically housing commission. In the time that I was there, it was predominantly what you would call very close to a Indigenous mish or a community. Mate, I was pretty well the only white fella growing up out there, maybe one or two other of us in a full-on Indigenous community. So as you can imagine, that wasn't easy by any means. In saying that, a lot of things took place in that environment. Unfortunately, there was a lot of child abuse, a lot of predators with sexual abuse. Myself being a survivor of being raped as a child over a course of 2 years. And it wasn't the easiest way of growing up. A lot of alcohol, a lot of grog. And, like drugs, maybe not so much drugs back then, as far as I can remember, but the alcohol was phenomenal, was huge.
Wow.
Even, my old gym, I remember getting up in the morning and, you'd look out the back and he's him and all the uncles from the neighborhood. There's no fence palings. It's all in a big fucking pile in the middle of the backyard, and they're drinking flagons of port and that'd go on for days. Where I grew up in a place called Aids, on the border of Bradbury and Aids, predominantly was, it was shocking. That's all there was to it. And if you were to go back there now, I believe that they've all been demolished. They're empties, and they've put estates out there. Speaking of the SBS documentary, Breaking the Cycle, they also did another one, short documentary on my actual life, and then the ride across Australia and stuff like that. They went back, flew me down there, and we went out to my old street. And it's even hard to sort of talk about it now. We filmed the house, the house where all the abuse happened, all my worst memories and nightmares of my own family, my father's violence and alcoholism, my mother being flogged, just me getting jumped, constantly, you know, being sexually abused and raped, you know, whether it be in the bush behind the school or under my actual house, because the houses, you know, had these 3-foot sort of high gaps underneath them that, you know, you'd go under there and play armies in the dirt when you're a kid, you know, just shit like that. But it became somewhere where, you know, the neighbors that were the predators would molest us. So I found it exceptionally hard. But the worst thing for me was seeing that nothing had changed. The thing is, Dave, too, unfortunately, you know, like I'll never forget the day, for example, two of the predators were brothers. One was 18 and one was 20. And my father was like best mates with their uncle, whom they all lived together in one house. And there was 4 predators within 2 streets. These particular 2, as I said, were brothers, and we used to have like a big bush behind our house. And, you know, you'd go down there and you'd ride the jumps, and that's what kids did. You just went down and played in the bush, made jumps on your BMX bikes in the creek, tadpoles, whatever. And I remember they came down there and they tried to sort of corner me, and I was on my own, and I managed to get away this day. And my old boy and their uncle had been drinking out the back. I come flying around. I would have been all but about 7 years of age. And I remember screaming in tears and coming out, oh, what's wrong? You know, and I tried to tell them that these boys, you know, had been forcing me to do things and touching me in places and making me do, you know, atrocious fucking sex acts that you just don't do to kids. Yeah, full stop. When I said that, my father actually turned around in anger and completely backhanded me in front of their uncle, lifted me 4 foot in the air, and I was just gobsmacked. And here's these 2 fucking dogs that had been molesting me come bolting down the street. And what they try to turn around and say is they caught me and their younger sister down in the bush. This was their escape plan, you know, their whole back out plan. And then I had to live with that burden. Well, the sister was never there. It never happened. I was just in the bush riding my BMX bike. But they made out like they had chased me out of the bush and, you know, caught their sister, who was, I think, a year or 2 younger than me, maybe 2 years younger than me at that age, you know, playing with each other in the bush. So trying to sit there and tell somebody that you're being molested, and this had been happening for a long time, to the point where I felt the courage to take off and run and ride on my bike. Like I was fucking shitting myself, and I managed to get away, and I thought, this is great. You know, I'm going to be able to tell someone that this has been happening. And it just, yeah, went against me. So that continued on and on and on. And
oh, brother, I couldn't even imagine, Again, no words, man. I've just been fucked, especially just being denied it even happened. I mean, what that would have done to your mental, like, makeup, you know what I mean, coming up. I mean, it just, oh, that's insane.
It really was. And I think the hardest thing too, my parents had separated at a very young age. My mother left, and that was it. She took off with my brother and sister. So for me, I never had any of that support network. I was just shit, you know what I mean, from the get-go. We also went to a Catholic school, which was, you know, just up the road from where we lived. And back then, you know, it wasn't something that, I guess, you know, a broken home in a Catholic school, you were shunned upon. So you were just shit. Once again, I was in a school where people had just wouldn't have anything to do with me. You couldn't talk to me because I was the bad kid. You know what I mean? I come from the broken home, and a Catholic primary school, that's unheard of back then, you know. Split families is bad news. And I was being also molested by 2 priests, well, brothers as they're called, because back then we had nuns and brothers. So it didn't really set me up for a good path. I had rugby league I was very good at. I did make, you know, the rep teams. I was, as far as sort of, I had to wear a mask, if I can put it that way. I had to pretend everything was good, you know, and my way out was to play good football. I was aggressive on the field. I was strong. I had this, you know, ability to just go that extra mile. And I think it was because I was carrying so much pain. I needed an out, and this was my way out. And I didn't give a fuck who was watching me. It didn't matter. I didn't need that "go son," or, you know, like that's my boy, or any of that shit. It was just me finding peace. I guess now as a man, I look back and think like that. I wouldn't have said that years ago. To what I was living with, you know, and that went right through 7 up until about 10 and a half. And then for me, school was just all over the place. You know, I was being molested, like I said, by two of the brothers at the Catholic school. So there was no safe place. My father had gotten to the point where he would have, you know, basically physically attacked me, which I was going to school with bruising. So then docs and family and community services got involved. Next thing you know, I'm in and out of foster homes. And that right there was the turning point of everything. And I turned to the streets, crime, drugs, and notoriety. As much as I could create havoc and rebel and be as violent as I possibly could. In I guess now, and as I say, once again, understanding all these years later, a lot more behind who I was and why. You know, I was just a hurt little boy for many, many years, even, you know, like going into club life and stuff like that. I mean, I never, and this is not sort of trying to talk tough, but I never ever sort of was worried or took a backward step or needed the club or the colors. You know what I mean? It was just purely, that's who I was. That's who I was when I came to the brotherhood. And it's who I am still today. You know, I've got no beef with that. But was I somebody that was, you know, absolutely torn and ripped apart? Absolutely.
Yeah, totally traumatized, man. I mean, to have to go through all of that by the time you're even 10, man. I mean, there just really is no other route but to you know, take out your anger somehow, to turn to the streets and all of that, man. I mean, so when you did sort of turn onto the streets and then get into that sort of a life, the crime life, was that still in Campbelltown, or did you?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, Dave, the thing was, and I'm sure others out there will relate to this, especially listening to your podcast, you know, you find brotherhood within that. You know, there's a lot of other damaged souls out there on the streets, you know, and the streets are a dangerous place. I mean, today they are, I suppose, but, you know, I'm talking, you know, 35 years ago, 30 years ago. And it was, mate, you'd be attacked at any time. You know, you had to keep your shoes on your feet. The only way to keep your shoes on your feet is learn to fight, because if you didn't, you were just going to get stood over, and it was common. And you know, I got a few times. Don't worry about that. You know, I got stabbed a few times, rolled for my shoes, fucking scars all across my back of my head from glass bottles, the old 500 ml glass bottles. You know, like that's just how it was. Walking through this particular spot where a lot of these brothers, the indigenous crew out there, would drink, and they were older, you know what I mean? But they were wild, and you walk through there and they'll turn you upside down, take everything you got. It's just simple as that. And it had happened to me. And the last time that I got stabbed in the leg, they got one shoe off me. So I had the one shoe. So I walked straight through there on the third time, and I had a 500 ml glass bottle of Coke, and it was empty, and I knew exactly what was going to happen. And as soon as the first one came to me, I just hit the ground and he slashed him right across the throat. And that caused, you know, a lot of drama, and I ended up locked up over it for malicious wounding and with intent. And yeah, it all sort of began from there, but it stopped a lot of drama, I think, of getting stood over in that environment at a young age, being a young kid with no backup, no support. Here I was trying to battle as it was, but I was standing on my own 2 feet. And from that day onwards, it was like, I'm never taking a backward step. I don't give a fuck who you are.
Yeah, far out. So I mean, because of your upbringing and just because of the trauma and what's happened to you, it's just you've been fully immersed into the street life, isn't it? Just really from the jump of life, isn't it? Just
Yeah,
turning to the streets
definitely.
and just right into the deep end, isn't it?
It definitely is, you know, and it used to, it used to be tough to the point where you know, you'd get locked up, and you'd almost be happy to get locked up because all your crew and all your boys would be in the boys' homes. You know, whether you went to Minna or Yasma or Penang, it wouldn't matter. You know, you go into the city, next minute, you know, I think I was 13, turning 14, and I was charged with assault and robbery and demand money with menace. Times 3, I'd held these people up at Darling Harbour at a key card teller. Minda Boys Home was quite hectic back then. You know, you had a lot of hard young adolescents that we were in for some heavy stuff. You know, a lot of gang things, like I said before. You know, 5T a lot of the Vietnamese boys were in there, and they were staunch, man. They were just dangerous boys. You know what I mean? It wasn't, I guess, like today with so many multicultural sort of parts of jails and boys' homes. This was either Asian, Indigenous. There was Islanders. It wasn't as many, but it was predominantly Indigenous and Asian. Mount Penang was the main jail back, or boys' home back then, and they had opened up a maximum security unit, and that was at Carryong. Now, we were all at Minda, and as I said, Minda was where a lot of, in Patterson House was where predominantly a lot of the harder, notorious young men were that were going to go to jail, predominantly straight off the back of their sentence. That would just roll into a jail sentence. I'd played up in Minda and basically got put on a truck, and we all got shipped up to Carryong. Carryong was the Maxo, Super Max of the Juvenile Justice Centre back then. And it fucking was. It was a big shock to the system. So I'd sort of, pretty well done the best part of 2 years before I sort of that process and going through the system. Then I got out. And I just turned 18 as I got out. And next minute I was pinched again. Didn't take me long, and I was 18 and off I went to Long Bay straight off the bat because I'd only just gotten out. And, I had no one at court. I had nothing there to support me. Well, what else would they do? So straight into Long Bay and straight into what was known as the RIC back then, which was 7 Wing. And my first cellmate just happened to be Ivan Milat for the first 3 nights, and I didn't even know who he was.
Shit. So that's a notorious serial killer over there in Australia. So that's your first spunk, mate, huh?
So when I went up, first thing is I've gone into the yard, and it was fucking nuts back then because the gear was real bad, like the heroin was just rife, and I had never seen how bad it could get until you're in a yard that you'd never been in before, especially a transit yard. So the RIC was basically the transit. 7 Wing was the transit wing, or reception, and then 9 Wing you had the transit wing, which some heavy hitters would be coming down through there, and in between jail transition from whatever jail. That this is where they'd stop.
Yeah.
So back then it was like the fucking post office. Everybody turned up there was chasing. Everybody turned up there. It was a city jail. There was always something going on, and you walked into the yard, and the amount of people that were just curled up in balls hanging out, and you just seen blokes walking up, taking their fucking Nikes clean off their feet, shitting themselves, vomiting, just curling up. It's nothing like that now in that respect. I didn't realize how bad it was until you're sitting there in a yard and you're watching 4 or 5 blokes with the bourgeois sitting there fucking, curled up, fucking one's keeping sub, and they're sitting there trying to file up on the concrete at the top of a fit to get it in their fucking vein. It just doesn't. You're 18 years of age and you're seeing this, and it's getting passed to each and every one of them just to have a shot. Like, it was putrid.
Well, so from moving on from your time in Long Bay, so you ended up getting involved in the motorcycle club scene and all of that. So how did that sort of initiate for you after getting out?
Yeah, so, well, I mean, growing up in Campbelltown, there was a strong, I hate using the word because it's just stereotyped, and, bikey. If I want to use that word bikey, I've never sort of seen myself as a bikey. It's just whatever. And I don't disrespectfully say, I say it with respect. I don't think that they should be identified as dirty bikies by any means, but this is how the media and everybody portrays it. So, there was a bikey culture, if I can put it that way, quite big in the western suburbs of Sydney. So, here I was doing a lot of bizzo, which back then involved pretty well that sort of scene you made money with or made money for, or however it was for that particular person involved in that scenario. For me, I was lucky enough to, have a bit of respect with a couple of senior members. So for me, I was able to make money with, which then obviously brought me into a culture. Yeah, as I got into my early 20s, I became a full patch member of a club, and it all sort of went down that road that probably was going to happen anyway.
Yeah. So was that the Bandidos, was it, in Sydney? Or?
No, that was predominantly my last club. I was with 2 clubs. And in the early stages, I was with another club, Lone Wolf.
Oh, okay, the Lone Wolves. All right, so notorious. They got a notorious reputation out there, especially in Sydney.
Yeah, brother, they're a staunch, very, very staunch crew. I mean, both clubs are. You know, just quietly to this day, I have respect for both clubs, and I I still honourably speak to some men that are still there, and some that have moved forward. But there's always been a very respectful relationship, and I have nothing but the utmost respect for both. I was very passionate, very passionate. And I did. I travelled around the world with the club, and got to meet brothers from around the world. I had some amazing experiences, and there's men I'll still call as a brother to me out there today in both clubs that if they dropped the phone call, man, I would drop everything and go and help them today. I would just simply do that because they're straight up good humans.
Yep. So, well, with that first club, how was it walking away, brother, and joining another club? Was that sort of
It wasn't a matter of walking away. A situation occurred, and I won't get into the specific details. I speak to this man today, and we have a lot of respect for each other and others involved in that period of my life. So I'm not going to sit here and go into too much detail. I had a confrontation with a particular person in that time. I didn't go about it the right way, I suppose. And, I wasn't told I had to leave. There was none of that. I chose to leave just because of my stubborn, I guess, my arrogance after several years, and plenty of good love and strong brotherhood. But this particular thing had upset me that much, that this brother and I had come to clash. It just really upset me. And I said, that's it, I'm done. So, it wasn't as simple as just walking away. We had, there was a few meetings and a lot of conversations and a lot of respect. And I thanked them, for honorably giving me that respect and blessing to leave the club. I wasn't going to join another club. Then, I was friends with, as a cool brothers. I had brothers from different clubs because back then it wasn't so, there were clubs at war and things like that, but it wasn't, growing up the way I did, I had mates in different clubs, simple as that, who I would do anything for and vice versa. In particular, there was some close brothers who were with the Bandits, and, I loved who they were, what they stood for. And, it was like, brother, you want to come and, hang out, come and have a ride with us. And, I knew what that meant at the time. I was like, nah, fuck, I'm not going back into the club life. You know what I mean? I was a one club, one man. That was my attitude. I was never going to join. I never joined a club to leave a club. It was just circumstantial between me and somebody else. And I loved that brother. I truly did. It was sad because he was like my little brother, if I can put it like that. You know what I mean? And he looked up to me, and I loved him. He was a staunch man, but we had a pretty nasty falling out over something. And I went to one of the nationals, one of the national runs, and I fell in love again with the club life. And I was just like caught up with boys that I didn't even realize that were in the club, from around Australia, and that we knew each other. And I was like, fuck, I miss this, and long and short of it all, I came into the club and with absolute respect to them, I wasn't asked to prospect. I came into a club basically as a probationary member straight up, and went straight into pretty well as Sergeant at Arms at the chapter that I was at. So there was a lot going on at that stage. There was a bit of rivalry between a few clubs. I won't say too much than that. It's not my position to talk about it, especially anymore. But I can tell you right now, there was a lot going down that the public, obviously didn't know, especially into war with other clubs. And unfortunately, there was a lot of members whom have passed from both sides due to that. So I came in right in the thick of it all.
Well, so you rose up the ranks pretty fast there. Obviously, I'm going straight to sergeant, but that sort of speaks to your reputation and respect, you know what I mean, amongst the boys.
It was look, it wasn't something that I'd speak of as a big noter. I was honoured to be asked, and like I said, I had sort of, from my young age, had got adopted that violence and that way of life and that mindset that I just refused to be beaten. I refused to be fucked with, and my retaliation was at full throttle. There was no repercussions for me. It was one way or the other, and it was either you going to get me or I was going to get you. So that was my mentality.
Well, so from there, I mean, from now being with the Bandits, well, you eventually went back to prison to do your
I did.
6 years. So
I did.
How did that end up happening?
So I had actually left the club. I wasn't kicked out of the club. I had no beef or drama at this particular stage. Once again, me being my hot-headed self, there was something that had happened that I dealt with without going through the right channels, and there was repercussions for that. As you must, especially in that position, must be something that's taken to the committee, and obviously at church or a meeting, it's discussed and however dealt with accordingly, whatever. I didn't do that, so I'd upset a couple of people. A lot of people understood it, and a lot of people didn't have a problem with it, but these particular brothers did, for whatever reason. It upset the apple cart. I was demoted from sergeant just back to probate member. I was filthy on the world. I was black-eyed, and that was where it was meant to end. And you know what I mean? That was my punishment for it. Well, I felt that was just not right, purely because of the circumstances of why I had reacted the way I did without asking permission, I suppose. And I dealt with it. So for me, I just went, fuck this. That's it. I'm done. This is years later after joining, and I did, and it shattered me, because I loved the brothers. I loved the club, and I still love a lot of the brothers today, even though I don't see them or have anything as such to do with them like I used to. Like I said earlier, if they rang me and said, "Brother, I need you," or whatever, I would honor that. I would still be beside them if they were in trouble or needed a hand. So that was about a year before I was arrested, maybe 6 months. So yeah, going into jail thinking, fuck, I'm an ex-member. I was looking at a big whack. I was looking at 10 years. I sort of was not worried, but knew that it could be a problem. And lucky enough, initially I was in the same wing as all the boys, and that's just how they do it. I don't know if Melbourne's the same or New Zealand, but if you're ex-member or member, unless you go to the boneyard, you go straight back in with where you were, and you just have to, deal with whatever. The brothers were good. There was no beef. There was no dramas. There was no nothing. And it wasn't until a little bit later on, and I'm not going to sit here and go deep into it, because there's a he says, she says, a couple of years into my sentence about fucking a fight that took place. Look, at the end of the fucking day, I got shit goed, and then that's just that the whack. You know what I mean? I did what I had to do, and I'm not talking about talking out of school, giving anyone up. And there was a couple of times there where a couple of fucking weeks wanted to try and sneak on me, and it didn't work for them. So that being said, I just did my time, stay out of politics.
Well, can I ask, brother, what you went to prison for that time?
Yeah, definitely. Commercial import. Yeah, any ask for any of mine. Mate, I got no skeletons in my closet. I was done with commercial importation, 3 kilos. So, yeah, it was something that, once again, without going into too much detail, they stumbled across. I knew it was off. The consignment company had called me and said that the shipping container had been pulled back by customs on the Thursday. It was supposed to be delivered on the Monday. I was flying to Sydney on the Friday, and I flew straight into it as a controlled delivery. And at the end of the day, brother, I took the whack. Basically, obviously, we had bodgy phones. It was all set up. I had a business, and this is public knowledge. I had a business that I was importing granite and marble. And at that stage, there was kegs put inside marble headstones, and it was coming through, and there was a solution that would be put into the bore, which would then fill it. So an X-ray wouldn't pick it up. This particular one come through with an inconsistency. It wasn't from my fault, but somebody on the other end had just fucking sent it without doing the right thing. So I got the call saying that the consignment company, the customs had released a shipping container, and it was going to be delivered out Western Sydney at this particular place. And I was like, fucking sweet, you know. So I started preparing myself, and I was like, between you and I was like, fuck yeah, we've kicked, you know what I mean? Like, we're on here. I've flown to Sydney, and one of my closest brothers down there, God love him, had no idea, but, you know, picked me up. Been mates for 20 years. We get out to where we were going. It's an industrial area at this particular place. It was winter, pitch black. There was no trees, bro. There was no high-rise buildings. It was just industrial units, barbed wire fences. You know, it's in a bit of a country part of the western suburbs of Sydney. I said, oh, mate, look, I can't remember. I knew where it was. I said, can you just do a lap? I've got to figure out where I've got to be, you know? And I knew, but I was sussing out what was going on, you know, trying to make sure that there was no cunt around. And he goes, are you sure, you know? I said, yeah. Oh, just it's dark, you know, like it's pitch black. Take me again. I said, I'll just stop here. And I kid you not, bro, there was no one. There was fucking no one inside at all. I got out, unlocked the code on this gate, went to the shipping container, cracked the shipping container. And I don't know, man, but it felt like it was fucking seconds, but it might have been 3 minutes, you know what I mean? But there was ninjas coming from fucking places I didn't even know it existed. I was hogtied with a fucking GP in my head and a fucking gun pointer telling me it's my unlucky day and it's all over. They've been watching me and I'm going, what the fuck? Who are you? You know what I mean? Who the fuck? They fuck up. I copped the fucking boot in the jaw and, you know, it was all on. And all I'm thinking is my poor buddy who's fucking just sitting there, been ripped out of a car. Like, he was no stranger to the system, but this wasn't his blue. You know what I mean? This had nothing to do with him. Anyway, they got us on the guard and they cuffed and fucking next minute they are, we're taking you back to the federal police at the, back towards the airport. There's a federal police center. I said, what for? He goes, you got an interview? I said, I don't have nothing to fucking say. That was where it all began, mate. It was looking at, you know, they're going, we've been watching. I'm thinking to myself at that stage, and this is not putting myself into any shit. This is, I was just thinking back then, how long you been watching me? You know, what have I been doing? And I'm thinking in my head, fuck, start thinking, you know what I mean? And I thought, shit, I can't, there's nothing I could say. So I had to sit there for about 5-6 months before the brief came in. And when I read the brief, I was like, they were talking like double figures. Like, they were talking fucking massive. And I'm thinking, fuck, you know, like, my wife's pregnant. My daughter's born. My daughter's vision impaired. You know, she's my apple in my eye, my angel, you know, and dad's not there. So I started to get a bit emotional. You know, I started to sort of, fuck, you know, this is fucked up. I'm gone. This is a big whack. Brother, and they looked and the brief was there and it said that they had me under surveillance for 4 days and this and that. And I was just like, all right, we'll start. All right. And I just went guilty. I just put my head straight up. So I went and got all these fucking mad psych reports and that because, you know, I had a forensic doctor fucking write up about my mental health and, you know, just everything that you do because you go into court and you need to put together your matter, you know, and I was looking at a big whack. So they got me at 10. Then they brought it down to 8 for an early guilty plea because I didn't fuck the court around. And, yeah, then the magistrate sort of said, look, you know, you've got a young family there. He goes, mate, he just sort of said to me, look, I'm going to sentence you to 6 years and I hope that this is a deterrent, blah, 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 blah. And I went in and I was just rebelling. So I was upsetting not only the screws, but I was upsetting, you know, some of the boys, not personally, but just being loud, I guess, being aggressive, you know, abusive and getting run in on, getting tipped all the time, you know, getting ramped by the squad. Which ended up fucking just basically putting me in STG. And yeah, I was gang unit, Segro, and the rest is history.
Yep. Oh, all right, man. So I guess, well, you know, with that last sentence that you've done, you've obviously reevaluated your life, your priorities by this point. I mean, again, you know, now you've done so much, man. Raising mental health awareness, raising funds.
Yeah.
You've got the Clink podcast. So, I mean, how was it for you when you got out, man, and started getting involved in those things?
Yeah. Mate, look, Dave, it was very tough because you got to remember, I went in there, you know, I used to walk around with 2 or 3 phones. The phone would be always ringing. There's always someone dropping in. You're always going somewhere, you're always busy. I come out and it was just me. Me and my wife, my young daughter, and our son who had been born, who I missed out on the first 3 years predominantly of his life. You know what I mean? I was at Silverwater. We're in Segro there. We're in between, getting moved between jails. And we were locked down. And there was a knock. The D's from the outside come fucking banging on the door the next morning. And I was like, fuck, here we go. I'm gone again. You know what I mean? Like, they weren't there for me, but they were knocking on every cell door and opening up every cell door, asking, have we heard anything like before? And like, you're in Segro, bro. You don't hear shit unless you're yelling out or off the back of the yards and you're throwing lines, and you don't hear. The brothers will pray. That's about all you hear. Or you will hear a spinner screaming out. It's quiet. You know that. It was a very quiet night. There was nothing different. The brothers had prayed, TVs, just quiet radio music, what have you. 2 blokes took their lives. So for me, it was a bit of a big culture shock, because I was like, man, I can stay in this environment. I can become a statistic like these blokes have now become. And I say that with love, because I mean, that's someone's son. So I don't say that as a disrespectful, but clinically, if we're looking at it from a point of view of numbers, that's how they look at it. I could become, another person lost to the system. And I just went, fuck this. And I knew I had to dig deep. And I had never really dealt with being sexually abused as a child. I never dealt with the traumas. I never spoke about it. It was a weakness. You know what I mean? Every time I ever thought to speak about it reminded me of the day I got flogged for speaking to my own father about it, and getting lifted for even just mentioning it. So I started to, just really read and just be kind to myself, and it really softened me. So I needed to understand how I could better myself. I was living with PTSD, bipolar. I had suicidality. My mental health was just all over the shop. So I was medicated while I was in jail. And that was something that, I had to do, because if I didn't, I'd probably either stab someone or been stabbed, because of just my erraticness and the stupidity of the way I thought at times. So I'm
and also
glad.
just being in prison as well exacerbates mental health, and all of that.
Absolutely, and it's such a big thing in there. So
huge.
I
Huge.
vowed to never go down that road once I left jail. So I wanted to get healthy and well while I was in jail, to come out and not be dependent on antidepressants and psychotic drugs and things like that. And I thought, fuck, how can I do that? So I started to educate myself, and through obviously positive wellness, and that comes through exercise, which is huge in the system, where, blokes train for their mental wellness. Oh my God, this fucking bird. He's now getting shit. And I thought, this has got to work. So, how could I exert myself for 1 hour of, positive endorphin release for 1 hour of intense exercise will give you a 12-hour window of positive endorphin release. And that's what we want. We all want to feel that good. So I started working towards that, and I realized that this shit works. This shit really does work. Sure, I was still emotional about shit. Things were affecting me. It didn't change my world, but it allowed me to fucking breathe. It allowed me to just take a step back and go, okay, I can deal with this. You know what I mean? I can start to prepare myself. And I did that. I got my parole, had my date. I got home. I was the longest serving parolee under a federal within the community at that stage. It was 3 years, but no one else was serving 3 years parole under a federal charge. And a mate of mine rang me from Perth. He said, "Hey, you going, brother? I haven't seen you." Love him to today. One of those ones that you just go, fuck, man, I didn't expect that to be you, but love you, bro. You know what I mean? Like, thank you. And he said, "Oh, you got to get over to Perth." I said, yeah. I said, "What, on a fucking push bike?" He goes, yeah. And I went, "I'm going to ride to Perth." He goes, "What?" I said, "I am going to ride to Perth, and I am going to make awareness for suicidality and mental health." I guess you went, "No, fuck off." And I went, "That's it." So the bee had been planted, and me with my bipolar, I take everything to the extreme. So for me, it was like, I've got a purpose, I've got a reason, I've got a goal. Now it's time to train. Anyway, I had a cycle, like a proper road bike, like a Tour de France. I love cycling. And even now, like I ride downhill mountain bike and I love it, man. It's something that I'm addicted to. So I started to, put together a bit of a business plan, and I was quite smart with that. And I, rang sponsorships, marketed myself, and I spent predominantly 12 months just planning this trip and training. And I had really no help at all. So I started an organization called Heavy Hitters. And the meaning behind that was, when life gets tough, things get heavy, you got to fight your way back. You got to hit hard. You got to keep fighting. And that's where heavy hitters, we're heavy hitters. You're a heavy hitter. I'm a heavy hitter. We've been at the bottom. We're back up, and all these lovely listeners out there and all the brothers out there listening, it's about the mana and the inner strength. And that was where it evolved from. So 2016, I just finished my parole May, 5th of May. And 1st of June, I was on the push bike, brother, on my first day. And off I went, said goodbye to my wife and kids. And, I had a big sort of send off from the media and a lot of good people. And the journey began. 45 days of unbelievable emotion, connection with country and culture, spiritual. It was, man, there was angels on my shoulders all the way across, bro. It was powerful. I had elders, welcome the country, and then I had elders give me the right of way, passing country for Indigenous communities.
Wow.
Powerful moments. I fractured my elbow. There's a scar. You see that scar there?
Yeah. Well, I've seen your pictures on Instagram as well.
Okay. So I had one guy, Justin Jansen, follow me across Australia with a car and a caravan. And brother, this young man did it voluntarily, and he looked after my nutrition. He looked after my clothes. He washed my, mate. I love this bloke. If you hear this, Justin, man, forever in my heart, brother. And I made it to Perth, and it was huge. Even is now. Like, I still look back, and it was massive to achieve it. I had every reason that I could have not made it, but the fact that I was doing it to represent the families that had lost so many lives, and sons and daughters and brothers and fathers and mothers to suicide, and starting conversation with mental health, and also connecting community and culture through Indigenous communities.
Wow, man, again, crazy journey, man, especially doing that after getting out of prison. What about, so when moving on to the podcast, was it not long after that you moved on to founding the Clink and
No, so that actually came years later. So I mean, after I'd finished my parole, I struggled. I had no purpose. I didn't have a trade. I got no skills. I was a criminal. That was my life. I knew crime, and that was all I knew. And I had my HC, and I thought, you know what, I'll go and upgrade it to an MC. So I had a open multi-combination. And that was probably the best thing. I started driving semis all around Australia. And here I was driving semis back over from Western Australia across exactly the same path as I cycled on, only a year and a half, 2 years prior. And I kid you not, I'd look down and I'd see myself. I see myself riding, and it was a mind-blowing experience. Each time I'd do a lap around Australia, and there was moments I'd remember where I didn't remember when I would talk to someone about it, but when I was driving, I'd go, fuck, that moment, I just seen it again. I remember that. Might only be just a tiny moment, but it was powerful in that time. And I fell in love with driving trucks around Australia and, remote. But then once again, it kept me away from my family, doing 3-4 weeks around, living out of a Kenworth. And as much as I loved it and I was providing for my family, I wasn't home, bro. I wasn't a present dad again. So my children were going without their dad again. And I thought, fuck, this is not good, And then next thing, because I live on a border town as an interstate truck driver, we were getting hammered, bro. We were never getting unloaded on time. We were never getting away on time. The downtime, I was like coming around and I'd duck into home for, half a night or whatever, have a feed, give my kids a hug and a kiss, see my wife, shower, feel good, change my clothes, swap everything out, jump back in my truck. Where it just gave me that another week of, I feel good, that all stopped. It all stopped, and the fatigue, the management of the fatigue, everyone was pushing. I got to the point, bro, I literally pulled up on the side of the freeway one day, and a good friend of mine, Willem, you might know, is that funny guy, Willem Powerfish. So he always spoke, and we had a conversation. He said, bro, he said, you're not good. I said, no, I'm not. He said, you got to get out of that truck. And I had a breakdown, and I literally pulled to the side of the road very early in the morning and was going to throw my rope over the back of the trailer, and that was my choice. And something stopped me from doing it. I physically got out of the truck, and I was adamant that there was no way out. This is where my life, that's what it was. Everything I'd sort of strive to fight against, to educate, to try and help. And here I was again, being that person who was going to become, a statistic and give those loved ones left behind a life sentence. Willem spoke to me. He said, got to get you out of there, man. What do you want to do? He goes, fuck, bro, start a podcast. I went, what? He goes, so many people, some great stories. People will come on and people share their stories. And I thought, fuck. And it gave me a little bit of a spark. So for the next, few days, I'm driving and my mind's ticking and I'm going, fucking yeah, podcast. What can I do that's different? I thought, you know what? I'm trying to live a life of redemption. Bang. I know heaps of good men out there that have fucking done big whacks or a lot of things in their life that are doing amazing things, that are inspiring, that are helping people not to go down these same paths. Where were they? I'm thinking jail, this and that. And then I went, the good old Clink, the old fucking the Clink. That was it. And I went, from there, I went, boom, that's it. The Clink, stories of redemption. And brother, we're just sitting on season 6 now, which you are a wonderful guest on. We're sitting just under 800,000 downloads in under 14 months. So I've been blessed to have, people from all over the world these days on there, fucking ex-mafia, underworld, drug lords that, they've done movies about. These people are authors. I've had, some of Australia's most amazing, notorious bank robbers, fucking murderers, prison escapees.
The Clink podcast. Definitely go check it out on Spotify and all other platforms. Awesome stories of redemption. That was actually how I came across Russell, was through the Clink. So that was awesome. Brother, what a story, man. I swear. Just so good to see you now being able to kick goals, man, and sort of be with your family there, man, living a happy life. I'm
trying, bro. They're still trying to fucking upset me, but there's a matter at the moment that I'm battling. I'm on bail again for a trafficking matter, but
is there anything that you this is this come out in the newspapers over there in Queensland, a bunch of stuff national news, so is there anything there that you did want to clear up there, or what sort of happened?
Look, it's pretty plain and simple. The media took my past history and basically, the headlines were ex-drug importer, gang member, selling black market CBD. This is definitely not the case. I paid GST on my stock. I registered a business. I was public about it. I used my platforms.
Yeah, it was all up on Instagram. Yeah.
They did a covert, as they called it, operation, and purchased 2 bottles of full spectrum CBD off our website. Now, full spectrum CBD does have a THC component within it. That's what full spectrum is. Does it do anything? Absolutely not. Is there any drug in it? This is absolutely zero. Will you get high if you drink 10 liters? Not a fucking chance. But it has 0.03% or under of a component within the plant. So they tested it. And as the police do, didn't test it for percentage or anything. It was just came back that it was tested positive for THC. So all of a sudden they've raided me and arrested me. Bail refused me for 5 days for trafficking, saying that
I was in the cells there.
Oh fuck yeah! It was just, they locked me up, in front of my kids, my wife, bro. I just literally took a B double from Brisbane to Sydney on the Monday. Got back on the Wednesday night. Sitting down, seeing my wife and kids, thinking, fuck, I've just done a good deed. I'm going to get paid. I've been to work. We're good. Things are good. Starting a small business called Relief Therapies. And it was starting to kick off. We started to make some waves. And then this particular activist who has a journalist friend, decided to contact the ABC, which ran a story, which was based around ex-gang member now selling illegal CBD, which put a red light on me. To then obviously the police then purchasing covertly, they undercoverly bought 2 bottles of fucking CBD, and what they try to imply, which I think is funny, and we're still waiting for the brief now, but it was along the lines of, we were like an underworld of THC oil that we were shipping all around the country, because I'm an interstate truck driver, that we were covertly sending this all around and no one knew nothing about it. Well, I hate to fucking tell you, but I paid my fucking GST tax. I registered the business. Everything was public. I was on. Do you really think someone with my record and my past, who would be looking at double figures for another trafficking fucking matter, would publicly be selling something that we knew was going to be putting himself in jail? Brother, not a chance. It's a tough road. And now obviously they're going to try and, push every button they can to try and, back me in a corner and financially lock us down to the point where we can't afford to fight it, because it is going to cost us everything. And it breaks my heart, because I've worked so hard, for my children, my family, we're not waiting. We rent a house. We don't fucking own a home. I'm just trying to give them a better life than I had. And if that's by showing and leading by example, that's what I'm doing, But now my children are worried again that, if for some reason this goes pear-shaped and I end up in jail, then it's gonna be a tough walk again.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it'll get sorted out at court, brother. You know what I mean? Pretty certain, when you go to court, you'll be able to sort things out, and hopefully get back on the good foot there. Look, brother, I mean, man, thank you so much for sharing your story, man. We're coming to the end here, my bro. Man, it's been an honor having you on, man.
Thank you very much, brother, for fucking having me.
Nah, all good, brother. I mean, again, I remember seeing you in prison, man. I was sitting in my cell there, man, looking on SBS, and I remember you coming on there, brother. And
that's crazy.
You're a bit fatter then, though. You're a bit fatter then. Looking at it.
Fuck you.
You're a bit chunkier then, but that's why I didn't recognize you.
Oh, God love you. Hey, listen, that fucking chunky bloke, man, did a lot of good.
Yeah,
he rode a push bike across Australia, bro, at 135 kilos. I was a fucking big man in a little bit of lycra. You know what? I laugh at it now, but I would have fucking knocked anybody out that had said something to me back then. Like, look at you, fat and lycra. Oh, whack. Today it's a joke, it's a laugh, and you know what? It allowed me to do great things. Thank you very much, and I want to just say thank you to all your listeners out there for taking the time to hear my story. It may not be for everybody, but I hope that somebody out there at least gets something out of me sharing my journey with you and all your listeners today. And congratulations on everything you're doing, brother. Keep up that great work, and keep being on the front line, man, because I know that you've got a purpose out there at the moment, and I'm watching from afar. We got you. Much love, brother.
All right, much love, bro, and we'll talk soon.